Hello, and welcome to the Kosh. I'm your host, Timber Smith, and thank you again for tuning in to another episode. As you know, it's a Saturday morning. Not gorgeous out. It's kind of okay. But I'm going to tell you what makes this Saturday morning a little happier than most, at least for myself. I had a recent birthday. Birthday came in yesterday. The way I like to put it, I'm not going to say how old I am. I'm just going to say that I have a big toe on 50. I'm close. All right. So I'm feeling good about life because I do think about, some people freak out about their age. And I'm just grateful that these numbers continue to increase because there's a huge problem when they stop. You know what I mean? It's just not a hot deal. Kosh listeners, you know what I'm going to say. Once again, once again, I don't know how I get these amazing guests. I get the best guests. And I can tell you already, from the moment this particular guest came in the door, there's energy. So this is going to be a fire episode, and I'm super excited to have this conversation. I just think we're gonna touch on some things. We're going spaces and places with this. So please give us a chance. I think you're gonna appreciate it. So without further ado, this week's guest is Aaron Sherer. How'd I do?
That'll work. Yeah.
You'll forgive me. Well, I try really hard, and Kosh listeners, I actually took the time to ask him how to enunciate it first this time, because, normally I will just slaughter it up and then ask for forgiveness after. This is just how it goes.
Bruh.
All right. Aaron, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
I'm excited to be here.
Oh, and let me give my intro. The Kosh is a podcast that spotlights people who've had an association with Oshkosh or the surrounding Fox Cities area. Aaron, can you please share a little something about yourself and what's your connection to the Kosh?
Sure. First of all, happy birthday.
Hey. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not sure I feel the same way about age, but I'm thinking we're pretty close to the same age because I'm 49 and that 50 is, I've got a big toe.
You got a big toe on it.
And I have mixed feelings about it. I've had a few midlife crises now, but I'm doing good today.
You're doing good today? I feel that. I don't know. Maybe I've had them and I just didn't know that's what they were. That's what I'm going to say.
Bruh. So, I'm a dad here in the community. I've actually lived here for 20 years with my husband, Paul Smith. We moved here for my job. I'm the director of the Paint Arts Center and Gardens. Paul's a special ed teacher in the school district.
Nice.
And we have 4 sons. We adopted them through foster care. And they are now, I've got 2 in high school at North, 1 at Webster Stanley, and 1 at E. Cook.
Ooh. All boys.
All boys, yep. And to just keep life interesting, right now we have an exchange student from Spain who's a junior at North.
What? And so you have 4, and you're like, we'll just add a little more love in our house.
I figure, why not?
Why not?
Sure.
Well, that's true. After a certain number, I mean, what difference does it make, right?
It's been going fine. Actually, it's kind of a neat story. I won't tell the whole story, but his mother was an exchange student with my aunt and uncle and then my grandparents 35 years ago in my hometown.
Bruh. For real?
For real.
Oh.
So we've stayed in touch, and her son wanted to do an exchange program, and I said, well, he should just come to our house because he'll just kind of fall right into the fold of all the boys, and it'll be fine. And it has been. He's a great kid.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. If I can ask, what's the hometown?
So I grew up in rural western Iowa. The town is Woodbine, Iowa, and it's outside of Council Bluffs, Omaha, Nebraska area, west side of Iowa.
How big or not big is that?
We're talking like Winneconne size. There's maybe 1,000 some people in Woodbine, Iowa, and my siblings are all still there. I have 2 brothers and a sister who are all married and have kids, and so I still go to my hometown often and visit family and all my nieces and nephews.
Yeah, that's kind of sweet. Okay, are we? I was gonna ask, are we going this year for the holidays or?
We're going to be here in Oshkosh for Christmas Day, but then we're going to pack up and we're all going to drive to Iowa and spend a few days there and spend New Year's there with my family.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay.
My kids love it. They have lots of cousins, so it's their chance to have cousin time.
That's the one thing. Like, my mom was really big and she kept it really tight with the family, and I was basically allowed to kick it with my cousins. I could kick it with the kids that lived on my block, and I could kick it with my cousins. And shout out to my cousins, because I always think about y'all. Love you and miss you. Cousins. They're the best. They're the best partners in crime you can have.
Yep. I grew up close to my cousins, too.
Oh, okay. So, you ready to jump into the first segment?
Let's go.
All right. First segment is called What in the World is Going On With? This is where you start with the phrase, what in the world is going on with? And you tell us what's on your mind.
Okay. So I've told you, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I've noticed there's kind of a pattern that develops with this question where the guest answers often with something that's really heavy, like world hunger. And there's this heavy conversation, and then it goes to your turn, and you're like, what's up with people who put pineapple on pizza? No, that's not one of them, but something like that. And then there's this kind of lighthearted conversation. So I've been struggling. Oh, do I go heavy or do I go light? But I do have to tell you, I threw this out to my husband, Paul, last night, because I kind of knew he'd get it. And he started firing him off right away.
Ooh.
He was like, why is Grogu now an appropriate, holiday decoration? Do you know Grogu from The Mandalorian? The little Yoda, the little baby Yoda.
Yeah, I only know it as Baby Yoda.
Yeah, Baby Yoda. He's like, why is that now a holiday decoration? He's an inflatable in people's yards, and he's on sweaters.
Oh my God, yes. And you know what's funny is I just saw a 5-pack of ornaments for him.
So, I mean, he thinks it's funny, but also like, what's holiday about that? And then his next one was, why have Crocs come back? He said half of middle schoolers now are wearing Crocs to school.
Bruh. Crocs never went out. Oh, okay. And that's what I'm gonna say. I feel like I've got answers to this. You are right. Like, Crocs go hard. They do go hard, and they will rock these Crocs now. But I don't know if Crocs ever went out.
Okay.
I just think there's a new demographic that has started really liking them
again. Well, our son wears them to school, and the winter has not discouraged him at all from wearing.
He needs some of those furries.
He's going to need some warm socks soon, that's for sure. But so mine is somewhere in between, but mine's an honest one. So what in the world is going on with the teens and preteens in my house who I'm trying to domesticate every day, and they're trying to go feral every day?
Bruh. Break that down.
Well, I'm not that good at being a dad, but I do something I kind of need or want is some orderliness in my life, and my kids, they just work against that every single day. So, and they're boys. And I mean, I think I've heard girls are just as bad, but just basic things like flushing the toilet. Like, why can't you flush the toilet? What's so hard about flushing the toilet? I realized this has been, maybe it was last school year, but I realized I was giving, and not exaggerating, up to 100 reminders in the morning just to get my kids out of the house.
Ooh.
Ryan, you got to get out of bed. Ryan, get out of bed. Ryan, time to get out of bed. Ryan, you got to get dressed. Nope. Ryan, clean underwear before you put on your clothes. Clean underwear.
Bruh. This is fantastic.
Well, it's the truth. So I will say one thing is I've turned some of that morning parenting over to Alexa.
Oh.
So Alexa now at high volume now gives many of the reminders in the morning. So
I like that strategy.
Alexa comes on and says, this is a reminder for Ryan. Ryan, it's time to get out of bed.
Oh, so you've programmed them all?
Lots. Yeah.
Oh, that's so fabulous. Do they talk back to Alexa?
Well, they've learned that they can, get Alexa off track if they start asking Alexa other questions or turning down the volume. But for the most part, they let it go. It works pretty well.
I think this might be a new parenting tip. Parenting tip. If you find yourself frustrated with those young people in your home, don't feel like you have to do it alone.
Yeah.
Bring in Alexa.
That's right.
I think that's fabulous.
Put Alexa to work doing something productive. That's for sure.
All right. And I'm an Alexa fan, so I feel it. Like I feel if I keep saying it, at some point she's going to come and talk to us. This is going to happen.
Yeah. You never know. But no, we did. So Alexa gives reminders all through the morning, even up to it's time to go to school. Put your coat on. It's time to go to school. Because otherwise, they're on their electronics or they get distracted by something. And anyway, I still have to give reminders too, but not quite as many.
So just for the listeners out there, has this been successful? Do you feel it's been successful?
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. I think, part of it is that they just don't keep track of time very well in the morning.
Absolutely.
They just don't kind of have a sense of things moving along, and they don't, a steady pace. And so part of it is just that, they get the prompt and they kind of get used to it. Alexa usually gives the time, too, which they just don't, that they don't pay attention to clocks or time as much. So, it'll say it's, 7:10, you should have brushed your teeth by now.
Why do I feel like there's almost like you need to write an article about this. Like I do feel like this, help your AI manage your morning routine.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, I think that's fabulous. Okay. All right. What in the world is going on with Facebook birthday wishes? All right. And let me just say this. I absolutely love them. Right? This is not, now normally when I go and it's my what in the world is going on with, I usually might vent a little bit.
Yeah.
Share a little bit of pause. But this one is one where I really just want to say whoever came up with this was brilliant.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it on so many levels because no matter how small that little wish is, the fact that somebody took a few moments in their day to just wish you a happy birthday. And as the number builds up, it just feels good. You feel, I don't know about the rest of you, but me personally, it makes me feel loved.
Yeah, I think it's great. Facebook, social media, I know there's good and evil to it, but there's some really great things about it.
Yeah. And so since this is something I'm just experiencing again, every year I'm always blown away a little bit, and just the people that take that time. And so I just want to celebrate that.
That's awesome.
Hey, and do a big fat shout out to everyone who took time to wish me a happy birthday out there on the FB. Thank you so much. I appreciate you 10,000%. I appreciate you.
Very nice.
Okay. Into the next segment, we are going to jump into word association. And word association is where I'm going to say a word and you're going to tell us what's on your mind. And we always like to start out with the universal unifying word of food.
Well, this kind of goes back to an earlier topic, and I know usually it's really positive associations, but I'm just going to be honest here, be real, that my first reaction to that is that as I get older, I have that frustration with food, that the things I love either don't agree with me as much as they used to, and or I know they're really bad for me.
Bruh. Facts. That's big fat facts. They don't love you anymore. No, there was a time.
Yeah. It just is what it is. But you don't have to pay a little more attention to what I eat because my body doesn't work it off quite as easily as it used to.
Oh, there's truth in that. But luckily, dad bods are cool. I'm gonna go out here I'm gonna celebrate the dad bods for us other fellow dad bod people.
Well, I'm living it, so good.
Is there a favorite? Well, is there a food in particular right now that you loved and you're backing away from, or you've had to change how you consume it?
There are a lot. But, well, so one, I can't eat as much, which is probably a good thing. Overeating now is my, stomach and everything can't handle that as much as I used to be able to.
Yeah, what is that? It feels like the older you get, like your appetite definitely has shrunk drastically. I have this conversation with the wife, and I'm always like, why do we got to buy two? Let's just split that.
Yeah, we have that one. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm just like, let's save the money and we'll put it towards happy libations. Well, but we can split that sandwich. It's huge.
Right. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, no, there's things, like a really good cheeseburger. I like a really good cheeseburger like anybody, but I have to, a whole cheeseburger might not, work for me anymore.
I've noticed the palate has changed where it concerns salt. Like things where I think I probably loved salt, right? And I didn't really think about it. But now when things are salty, it's different. And like, I'm like, oh my God, this is really, really salty. And I can't. Like I've definitely had to move to low sodium items, and like it's different. So I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. I understand.
Cocktail or beer?
So I'm definitely a cocktail person. I do like beer. But I don't have I'm not that adventurous with beer. I like to taste test beer, but in our house, we pretty much always have Spotted Cow in the fridge. That's kind of the go-to beer, but that's it. But cocktail, if I have a choice, I'm usually interested in a cocktail.
Oh, do we got a fave?
Well, lately, this is kind of sad, but I love margaritas, but I had never made them at home.
Bruh. Really?
Right. Well, I guess if I had, it was just the mix with some tequila, but the mix I don't really like. It's super sweet and tends to, I don't know, it doesn't have the same taste as to me when you're out and about.
Right.
So not too long ago, I started making margaritas at home. Super easy. I love that, you can tweak them the way you like them then, have the tequila at just the right amount, the lime at just the right amount.
Do we got a favorite flavor, or do you just like the original?
Well, I don't know. So I pretty much do lime, just pretty much regular, but use a nice tequila. And then I'm putting either Cointreau in it or Grand Marnier, if I'm saying that right, which is an orange liqueur.
Okay.
In it. And then I sometimes throw in a little orange juice or clementine juice.
Ooh, that does sound good.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I like a good margarita. Well, let me ask this next question. Do you prefer it blended or just on the rocks?
On the rocks, yep. Yeah.
All right.
What are you blended?
I like the blended, but the I don't always like the brain freeze that comes along with the blended, because the blended will get you, and there's there's a good little thing of brain freeze that can happen.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm breaking, protocol or breaking some rules, but I actually, when I'm making them at home, I'm actually serving them now in a martini glass, because I usually make them pretty strong, more like a martini would be.
I think you make the rules. That sounds fabulous, though.
Bruh.
And now I want to be shaken or stirred. No. Okay. Fabulous. Concert.
So I'm going to be a little off script, that I don't go to a lot of concerts, but I do, like everybody, I love music, but I'm especially a visual person. So I am a musical theater kind of guy. And actually, I do like ballet and opera. So I love it when there's something visual to watch along with the music.
Is there a favorite ballet or opera that you like?
That's a great question. There's a couple that I've seen that, so if I'm in New York or somewhere, if I can go to the ballet or the opera, if it fits into my schedule, it's a little harder with kids now. I'll try to see it. But I was in Paris once, and a friend and I just kind of on a whim went to opera called Norma, and it was set. The staging was by a designer, an artist named Robert Wilson, I believe I have that right, and it was very like futuristic. So it took this old classic opera and put it in this very kind of modern futuristic setting. It was just beautiful to watch, and it made the music, it just elevated the music.
Is there anything, because I'm always thinking, like, what can we share with the listeners? Is there anything that's come around locally that you've liked lately, whether at the Grand or at the PAC?
Well, so PAC, I have seen Hamilton 3 times, so that's a good one. Good example.
I haven't seen that one yet. I'm working on those tickets. They ain't easy to get.
Well, it's coming up at the PAC in May.
Okay.
So watch for it there. I've seen it. I saw it at the PAC, and it was fantastic. I saw it twice in Chicago and once at the PAC. So I love it. It's awesome.
All right. So Hamilton. Yep. And it's everything the hype says it is.
I think it is, and probably more. There's just a lot of layers to it that you can appreciate. I mean, you can just appreciate it because it's awesome music and it's intense. But if you really kind of listen, it's thought-provoking, and the casting of it's really fascinating. That even though it's primarily depicting white American historic figures, that it's total, colorblind casting. So black and brown characters playing these figures, which I love because it's everyone's history. American history is everyone's history. So
facts.
Yeah.
Bruh. All right. Streaming.
So I'm got a lot of different streaming channels now. I remember from the show you were kind of anti HBO at one point. Have you crossed over to HBO yet?
Well, here's my thing. I'm not anti might be strong because I'm not saying HBO is not good. What I'm saying is I didn't want to pay the extra money for HBO because
well,
but I'm gonna. Here's the funny thing. I think I'm gonna break down because I really want to watch The Wire.
Oh, that's like an oldie but a goodie, right?
Everybody, it keeps popping up, and all these people keep telling me it's a must watch, and I never saw it. So I think I've got some time over the holidays. I think I'm gonna binge it through.
Listen, I watched The Wire years ago. I wasn't watching it new, so I mean, I was kind of watching old episodes, but this is like old school. I watched it Netflix when you had to order CDs through the mail. And so, I'd get whatever one of them and watch through however many episodes was on one, and then have to order, send it back and get the next DVD.
You've been in the game a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. But right now, so on HBO Max, I'm watching the 2nd season of The White Lotus. And I'm not sure if you've heard of the show White Lotus, but I love it.
What's it about?
Well, it's so the 2nd season, the first season was set in Hawaii, and it's set at a very wealthy or high-end resort. And it's just a super smart show. It deals with contemporary issues. But also is kind of sassy and a little irreverent about things. But the one in Hawaii was really dealing with indigenous cultures, was one of the big themes, and how, wealthy, rich people kind of come in and, with Hawaii in particular, and kind of change the whole environment and have this kind of privileged experience there. But it might not be, or often isn't, helping the indigenous culture there.
Facts.
And that was one theme. Race and racism is definitely a big theme through that season. This season is set in Italy, and it's kind of a similar thing in this gorgeous resort. And it's kind of dealing, actually the theme is largely centered around people's different attitudes and feelings around sex, but kind of contemporary issues around that.
Okay.
And again, kind of thought-provoking and edgy, but also irreverent and funny at times. Okay. And actually, both seasons are also, just to make it more interesting, both seasons begin with a murder. So also, while you're watching it, you're trying to figure out, okay, who gets killed and who kills them. And so The reason I'm talking about it today is the second season, the finale is tomorrow night, Sunday night. So finally we'll figure out who died and why did they die.
Is this a show where they release it like episode a week?
Episode a week. Yeah, they keep you hanging.
I appreciate that though.
Yeah, it definitely works.
Well, it brings it back to back in the day when you didn't get to like go through it, like, and you were forced to just be patient.
Yep.
Like there's something to that.
Yep.
But
if you now listen, I think if you did a trial HBO Max, subscription after this Sunday, I'm pretty sure you could go back and binge season 1 and season 2 because I think they're all on there now, or would be all on there now.
All right, I'm gonna Kosh listener, I'm gonna put you on game right now. If I am correct, they have a package where you can get HBO Max for $2.99 for the next 3 months. And I am all about that life. Let's be clear.
Yeah. Well, all of them too right now keep raising rates, and so that should have been what in the world is going on with like all of these streaming services are now figuring out they can push that rate because we're hooked, so they can push that rate up.
We are hooked.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm gonna. You know what? That's gonna be maybe a future. What in the world is going on with? Because there's another one. Like what in the world goes on with when you get a streaming system and then the things you got it for get taken because somebody else starts their own streaming service, and so then it just defeats the whole purpose that you got theirs. That's frustrating.
For sure. Well, and then I heard I don't know if it's true, but I just heard that Disney Plus is going to introduce 2 levels, and one's going to involve advertising. And I'm like, no, the whole reason I like to stream is that I don't have to watch all that advertising.
Well, I think what is happening, maybe, this is just me assuming, is like they've got to offer, because I assume lots of people are probably like, I don't know anybody that just is streaming one thing. Like they're usually streaming at least 3 to 4.
Yep.
In my house, we're probably streaming a lot more than that. But we get where we blend within our family. There's a couple I pick up. There's a couple my daughter picks up. Sure. We work it out. But I think they've got to find low cost options because Netflix is doing that. Netflix is going to have like a budget option with commercials.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And with less content. So like their entire content library is not going to be available through it. And I thought that was really, really interesting.
It is interesting. I don't know how I feel about it, but it doesn't hurt to try.
Well, I mean, look, every penny counts. And if you're counting those pennies and it's going to make a difference, I can't knock it.
Well, that's a good point. And especially since you say we're all getting up to multiple subscriptions on multiple channels. Like when you think about one channel, I feel like, oh, that price is pretty reasonable. Okay, right. What, $10 a month or something if you're watching it a lot. But yeah, then when you get 4, 5, 6 channels that you're streaming and paying for, it adds up.
It adds up. But, that to be said, it still feels a little cheaper than just cable by itself.
For sure. Yeah.
Because cable always got me where it was like, oh, they give you this great, great price and they might give it to you for 1 year or 2 years and then you forget about it. And then one day you look at your cable bill and you're like, you clutch your pearls.
Yeah.
You got it. It gives you pause. You're like, what in the world? Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. I'm afraid streaming's going to get there though.
Let's hope not.
Yeah.
Shop local.
The one I'm going to highlight because I just enjoyed it last night is Mara's Brazilian Cuisine. Do you know that down in the city center shops?
No.
Okay. Mara's is MARA''S. It's a little shop. It was a sandwich shop down there right next to Caramel Crisp. It's now Mara's. It's been that way for a few months, maybe several months. Brazilian cuisine, really wonderful, interesting food. Generally, you can go in there and order from the counter at different times, but the easiest way is to go online and order takeout. Okay. And so the meal will be prepared for you, and you go in and you grab this fantastic, really interesting meal and take it home. Last night I had shrimp and swordfish dishes with amazing sauces, rice on the side, and veggies. But also she does, and I'm going to forget the Brazilian word for them, but the word I think we often use for them, I think, is croquette, where it's deep fried mashed potatoes. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
They have it at Beckett's in town, but hers, they look like pears. And inside you can get like ground beef and cheese. You can get like a shredded chicken one. Last night I had a ham salad one, inside one, which was
Ham salad?
Well, it was kind of like, it might have been sausage, but it was kind of tasted more like ham. But inside the potatoes that have been deep fried, and there's some type of breading crust on them too, and they're amazing. And when you order takeout, you do have to, when you get there, you usually do have to wait a few minutes, because if you order those, she won't deep fry them until you get there. So to make sure you get them warm, by the time you get home, that they'll still be warm.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than fresh fried things. That just makes me happy to hear. And now,
for better or worse, that's true.
Going back to our earlier conversation. Things that we love that might not love us as much anymore. Deep fried things.
Yep, for sure.
But I'm not in that space to give up the deep friedness. There's a lot of happiness associated with deep fried things.
Yeah, there is.
All right, I'm going to have to check out Mars. That sounds pretty sweet. Do we got a favorite thing for there yet?
Well, she has a shrimp dish that she does. A lot of her, I think that one you can order anytime. She has daily specials, so you kind of have to hit the days if you want certain things. But the shrimp, I think, is always available. And it's just, the shrimp, I don't know where she gets it, but it's perfectly cooked and amazing. But it's in this creamy sauce that's just heavenly. So you eat it over rice.
Okay. Gosh, listeners, you heard it. Field trip.
Yeah.
We got to check this out, okay? Aaron, I'm going to do what I always do. You're going to have to take me here. We're going to have to go, and we're going to have to break bread and try this out.
I love it.
So we can report back. I want to be able to, if you could see the happiness, like, when food is really good is when people smile when they talk about it. Aaron has the big fat smile as he continues to talk about these dishes. So like, I'm super excited to try this out.
Well, if you go to, or when we go, you'll see that Mara herself is also a character. I mean, in all the wonderful ways, very, outgoing, engages you, talks to you about the food, wants you to really understand the culture behind the food and what's in it. So that adds to the experience as well.
Love it. Okay. Leadership.
I actually didn't think about this word till I saw it on the sheet here this morning, but I'm going to try to, it's kind of heavy, but talk about it in a way that kind of sets up maybe our conversation for later today or later this morning. But leadership, I want to talk a little bit about leadership and race and my children. So I shared with you before we started that I have, 4 adopted sons. The older 2 happen to be white. The younger 2 happen to be black. And our experience as parents has been that their experience in the community and in school is different, can be different.
Bruh. Facts.
And my partner, my husband and I, Paul, we were, as our 2 black sons entered school, we kind of kept having issues with the school every few months. It's felt like we were in there, kind of trying to sort something out. And after we had done that for a few years, we learned that some other families of the school, and we had seen things, that were having issues too. And it kind of hit us that, we've been so focused on advocating for our own kids that we've kind of forgot that we have to use our voices and our privilege to advocate for other families as well, and other kids who might not have, someone who kind of has the ability to get in front of people and the confidence and all that and the privilege to, insert their voice into a conversation and say, this is important.
To be heard.
Yep, to be heard. Exactly. So I think so what popped out for me on that was just that realization of the need to step up. And for for my husband, Paul, and I, that need has been kind of centered around racial equity in our kids in the school district, and us kind of taking, as when we can, taking a leadership voice in that issue.
That there's so many things. I have so many questions, and like, because you are really getting to see like the difference. I mean, how could you not, right? You have these white sons and you have these black sons. When you first saw how, let's say, I don't know how to put it, maybe the school system, whoever, educators, whatever, engaged your children differently, were you surprised, or did you just think it was a fluke, or was it something where you were like, oh, did it give you pause? What was your immediate reaction? Like, because I think it's easy for people to write some things off because they only get to see one side of it, and they're thinking it can't possibly, yeah, you hear this, it can't possibly be as bad as what they're saying, right? Or I didn't think that really existed anymore. Or maybe they're being a little sensitive, or these are really good people, so I can't see them making these mistakes.
So it's all of that. And I would say added to that is a level of, I don't quite have the right words for it, but almost embarrassment, or there's a word there where you kind of don't want to believe that your kid would be treated that way or singled out, and to admit it, that they're being treated differently somehow you feel bad about it, and you kind of have to get beyond that, no, there's probably a truth here. Ours, I think, would have to do with, it happens once and you're like, oh, that's a little weird. It happens again, like, by the third time, you're like, okay, we really need to pay attention to this. So one story I tell, because I think stories are a little more concrete when you can tell them, when it comes to this topic in particular, is when our oldest son, Dustin, was in kindergarten. One day we got a note home in his backpack from the teacher that said, today, Dustin choked another student. I talked to him about it, and he said he didn't know why he did it, but he wouldn't do it again. Period.
Bruh.
Okay. Beginning and end. That was it. And we're like, oh, okay, that's weird. It's not really Dustin's temperament, but kindergartners, do weird things. They're kids, they're learning. That was beginning and end of it. When our third son was in kindergarten and had only been there for a couple weeks, we got an email from the principal that said, Caden spent some time in the principal's office today because he has been targeting another student on the playground, and he's going to spend some time in the principal's office tomorrow as well, so that he has some time to, really think about this. So I mean, that instantly I was like, targeting. I mean, he's a kindergarten.
That's a strong word.
That is a really strong word. And also, I'm one of those people who, like, principal's office is pretty serious. Like,
for a kindergartner, that's very, very serious.
Right. So, and he has to go in again, so I was concerned. It just happened. My husband, Paul, was concerned, it kind of raised our level of this is strange. But it, was kind of a first experience. But we just happened to have a parent-teacher conference coming up. It was a get-to-know-you conference, so one of those really short ones where you're just supposed to kind of go and talk to the teacher. So we brought this up. We was like, hey, this happened with Caden. We're concerned about it. And the teachers, who were great, it was a co-taught classroom, the teachers was like, yeah, we're sorry about that. We don't know why that recess monitor took that to the principal. They really should have spoken to us about it. Those two have been kind of having a dynamic in the classroom, and in the classroom it was more kind of the student focused on Caden. So Caden must have kind of been using recess to kind of, defend himself or whatever a little bit back, but she was like, but we've worked on it in the classroom and they're friends now. It's all worked out. So we just kind of left it there. But to be honest, we've had multiple experiences like that. And it's not to say anybody's ill-intentioned in this, but, and actually it wasn't until recently that I've learned to just be very clear about this, how to try to be clear about it and articulate it clearly. We believe that our younger two sons who are Black are often disciplined to a degree that is not consistent with the behavior and their age.
Bruh.
Powerful.
Yeah.
I literally got goosebumps when you said it, because you said it with such honest authenticity and conviction. I felt that. I felt that in my soul. I felt that.
It's kind of hard to articulate too, because you don't maybe want to be that blunt, but then it's like, okay, no, because I've been trying to tell these stories and think people will get the punchline or get the moral of it. And it's like, oh no, I just need to stay. This is the issue.
You got to create pause. You got to say it in such a way that it's not easy to do. It definitely takes courage. But you've got to say it in an unapologetic way. Because what you're really saying is, I see this. Do you see this?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not sure if it's breaking through yet. I think people don't, want to admit it's kind of an ugly thing to admit. But when I do talk about it, I do, to be fair, I don't want to say that teachers or administrators are intentionally doing this.
Yeah, absolutely not.
But
here's what I'm going to say. I do think it is not. If I was going to say it's anything, I would call it unconscious bias.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think I think most 99.9% of most educators have the greatest intent. They're in the business for a reason. They're usually 1,000% amazing. I know so many educators and they're just good, solid people, but they're human.
Yep. That's exactly it.
They're human, and they also are subject to the things of anyone else, which means they also may not have diverse lives. They may live in silos. And until someone says it, they may not realize it.
It's that exactly. I mean, we are so grateful for the teachers that our kids have had at E. Cook and Webster. I mean, just outstanding teachers doing great work, and really have had a lot of our concerns haven't even been with teachers. They've been with ancillary programs like the after school program, or they have been with, administration. We feel like coming down a little too hard. This is a kindergartner or a first grader, or even if they're a fourth grader, this kid's 10 years old. Like 10-year-olds do stupid things.
Facts. Bruh. It's what actually, I think it comes in the description.
Right.
You're supposed to get all the stupid stuff out while you're young and you're still cute and people will forgive you.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of been our journey. We are trying, when we have opportunities, to speak up about it. And part of that is because we've seen and heard other families who are having the same experience and maybe don't quite have the, ability, or again, it really is a privilege thing. I feel pretty confident that I'm going to call up the principal and say, we need to meet, we need to talk. Right. And I'm going to expect, a response. I'm going to expect some type of change or response that corrects, or tries to make amends in the situation.
Yeah. I think sometimes what gets lost, particularly with interactions between parents and administrators, I did work in the school system for a little bit. Okay. I've been around a little bit. And what people forget inside of the administration of schools is like their interaction with the parent. Some parents are carrying the trauma of when they went to school.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a tough time advocating because it feels like they're in trouble, or they're go back to when they went to school and they were treated this way, and they can't articulate, or they feel like they're automatically going to be treated or considered wrong or invalidated. And I saw that time and time again, and it had everything to do with their experience when they were in school, and they just assumed nothing changed. So they're just assuming they're not going to be heard now as a parent any more than they were heard when they were students and their parents tried to advocate.
Yeah. I think that's important to hear and think about. I know it's kind of unpleasant, but it's just true. And my husband and I saw it numerous times. It's just kind of one example of that is at our boys' school, there was an after-school program, and the coordinator of that, and it could be a challenging program and challenging behaviors, but would often witness this coordinator confronting parents and their students as they were picking them up. And these were in the days where you'd come into the school because of COVID and safety. You don't usually go into school, but in front of other parents and kids would be kind of, I would say, pretty assertively, if not aggressively, confronting student behavior issues to the parents, kind of in this very public setting. And it's just, after you see that multiple times, even once, but at multiple times, like this is not good.
Yeah. And to be fair, there's also a side of things where not all parents are well engaged. So I'm a person, I always want to talk on both sides of a thing, because I want to make sure one side isn't thinking like we're saying we don't see the like we're not familiar or understand that other side too. Like there's also a side where some people leave a great amount of responsibility to the schools in their programs. And they might need to engage a little more firmly and regularly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously true, and every family, every situation is different and complex. But I think it's important what you said too is, okay, if these parents aren't as engaged or don't feel as confident interacting with the school and collaborating with the school to look for solutions. I mean, that's something with Paul and I, again, kind of that privilege issue, but we always have this thing like, let's work together. We can enforce behaviors at home. We can, if you have a discipline, little notes, let us know, did you have a good day or a bad day? If you had a bad day, no iPad tonight, but feel very confident, like we can work together on this, so kind of like you said, if the parent's not as engaged or doesn't realize there could be a collaborative effort, there, why is that?
Yeah. All right. That was fantastic. All right. Community.
So I kind of have a complex answer to this, but a thing that I have grown to appreciate about Oshkosh is the range of people that call this place home and can make a life here and find their interests and their community here and feel comfortable here. And why I say that is my 4 sons, I don't know where they will go in life, who they might be. They all receive special ed services of some kind or another. So their challenges are all a little different, and what their abilities and future might be, it's all a little different and unclear. But I feel pretty confident no matter what, Oshkosh is going to be a good home for them, that they're, no matter, what job they end up pursuing, that they'll be able to live here, be a valuable member of the community, and have a place to call home. And I think we've got a lot of work to do for Black and brown people to make sure that that's true for them. But I know I've heard you say, and I believe that, things are changing and getting better. But anyway, and the reason I share that experience is this has been a number of years ago, but my husband's from the East Coast. His family's out there. And at one point there was a job that maybe would be a good fit for me. I didn't even apply for it, but we were talking, what would it mean to move out there? Well, that area, because of the cost of living, is very segregated economically, job, profession wise. And we're like, would we want to live in a community where maybe our sons, as they go out into the world, wouldn't even be able to afford to live in that community, and so their home wouldn't be their home. They wouldn't be their home, as they grew into adults. Anyway, so that's a part of it. Appreciated. I love, E-Cook, where our kids have gone, is a really neat school, and it's not to say it's perfect, clearly, as we've been talking about, but a really neat school. And a thing I love about it is the range of people who go there. So from range of race and ethnicity, but job, profession, economic level, interest level. It's a very eclectic school, and everybody is kind of making it work.
I do. Some of the schools, to me, I think are so cool in the demographics that they share, because there's racial diversity, there's socioeconomic diversity. Like, my daughter definitely, as she went through the Kosh school system, like it for Northeast Wisconsin, I like to think that she had a pretty decent diverse experience. And I had all sorts of young ladies over at the house, coming, hanging out and doing what young ladies do, which is eat your food and stuff, and hang out and watch stuff and dance around and stuff. But she had a really good group of friends, and they were all different, and I appreciated that she got to have that experience here in the Kosh.
I think it's a great thing about the community. I think our school, the way our school district is set up, generally really encourages that kind of crossover between a lot of different people.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. Awesome. Okay, we're going to jump into the next segment, the Kosh Hidden Gems. This is your opportunity to share a hidden gem associated with the region or here in the Kosh. It doesn't have to be a place. It can be whatever it is, or it could be something we all know about, and maybe we just don't know something special about it.
Well, we're going with a theme today, but I have a pretty unique one, and I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but have you heard of Umoja, which is a local organization, but also an annual retreat that happens in the area?
No. I've heard the term.
Right, Umoja. Yep.
I didn't know there's an organization.
Yep, there's an organization that is, the woman who runs it is in Appleton, but she organizes an annual retreat that happens in Green Lake, and she calls it Umoja, and she works with a number of people in the region, but it is a weekend retreat for transracial families. So primarily white adults who have adopted black kids. And it's a really cool weekend. The kids have a lot of opportunities to, play together, learn together, but also have experiences with black culture. So music, historical figures, all sorts of things. It's primarily college students, I think, from St. Norbert's who lead the activity. So primarily black students from St. Norbert's, so they have an experience with kind of older kids, to mentor them. But then the adults, we have educational sessions offered to us that are primarily led by, and this is really eye-opening, primarily led by adults who are black, who as children, they were adopted by white families.
Bruh.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That sounds super powerful.
It's pretty powerful. Honestly, it's hard. A lot of what they have to say is very hard to hear, because a lot of their experiences were not positive. A lot of them were adopted 70s, 80s, because they're adults now, they're professionals out in the world. But the mindset then, and I think kind of now, especially by white families, is, oh, I don't see color, I'm colorblind,
Right.
and could kind of erase their child's experience. So, if the kid's getting picked on a lot in school, not addressing that there's a race issue there.
Right.
And so then the kid, learns that, oh, I can't talk about this, even though this is what my experience is.
I can't advocate for myself.
Yeah. And it's, so that, I mean, as a parent, I would say, often when I've gone, I felt like I've gotten kind of punched in the gut, because you realize about the challenges that your sons are facing, and you realize about your responsibilities as a parent. I was very, very naive when we accepted our younger two sons as foster parents and then adopted them. I mean, had all the notions that any parent has, love these kids, they need a home, happy to have them, with me, proud to be their dad. But honestly, was very naive about the level of responsibility that I was taking on.
That's fantastic. What, if I can ask, what's one of the greatest takeaways from from taking that responsibility that's come to realization?
Yeah. So one is, beginning to be really intentional about making sure that my sons have relationships and experiences with other Black, adults, and for sure, and older youth, that they can see themselves reflected, have those relationships, are comfortable in those relationships.
Yes.
So, and we should do a lot more and could do a lot more. But one example about just being very intentional about it is when Sylvia Carey Butler was in town at the university, and I knew her, and I reached out to her and I said, my sons really need a Black mentor who can spend some time with them. They don't have any Black male adult in their life right now. Do you have any thoughts about this? And she absolutely said, there's this guy, he's a great student. I think he'd love it. He was on the football team, maybe not your typical person who's going to hang out with little boys, because they were pretty young at that time. But for a number of years, he came over to our house on Sunday afternoons and just played with the boys, usually roughed house with them. They broke some things.
Bruh.
But that was Rajon Hall. I don't know if you know Rajon.
Oh, I do know Rajon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who would have thought? Like, he came over to our house for a couple years on Sundays, and
Great gentleman.
Yeah.
He's doing really well.
And the boys we went to some of his football games, so they could kind of see him play football. And it was so just one thing where that's not going to happen on its own. So as a parent, you need to try to figure out how to make that happen.
Take that initiation. I can only imagine how powerful it was for Rajon also.
Oh yeah, I hope so. We're still in touch on Facebook. He's doing amazing things. Really, really awesome person.
Okay. What's the Kosh need?
Well, we clearly have a theme going here today, but I'm like you. I love Oshkosh. I have a lot of optimism about, Oshkosh's future and where it's going. But I do think Oshkosh needs to have a more kind of intentional mindset about diversity, and that we can't just hope it all happens and goes smoothly. That, there needs to be similar, like I was talking as a parent, just intentional action, that when there's opportunities to say, or to look for opportunities where, hey, this situation could be better. Is there something, instead of just hoping it changes, is there something intentional we can do? And I think little things go a long ways.
Oh yeah. Well, it takes the little things to make the big things.
Yep.
And my other thing would be, I agree 1,000% with you. Like, there needs to be that. And the other thing we can't continue to do is to act like we don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, because that's a feeling I get. Like, there's this thing where our community, I've been here 30. We've drastically changed who we are, who our identity is, and will continue to be. I forgot who I was talking to, and they had just, I have said this multiple times on multiple episodes. The population, our diverse population of our schools right now is at 25%. And someone corrected me and they're like, oh no, we're at 29 now.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, once again, and I've said this, you can't put the jack back in the box. So we're going to continue to transition and transform. And I feel like we need to be proactive versus reactive and just making this a more welcoming space for all of who we're becoming, our new identity, the new identity of the Kosh.
Yep, absolutely. I kind of cringe to tell this story, but it's a true story, and it shows to me what a powerful project the Color Brave photo project was that Tracy Robertson did. That when I came here 20 years ago, it was told to me more than once in just a matter-of-fact way that, Oshkosh really didn't have black people living here until the prison was built.
I was going to say, this is the prison.
Yeah.
It's always, I've heard that. Oh, my God, it drives me nuts.
Well, and so I was, naive. My eyes weren't open. And so I just accepted that as truth. I'm like, oh, okay. And so for years, until the Color Brave photo project, I just thought that was true. I had accepted it as truth. And then you find out like, oh no, wait, it's actually not true. Both statistically, data wise, it's not true, but also when black and brown families have moved here, it's for all the reasons that any other family has moved here.
Oh my God. I say that all the time, all the time.
So that's what, I just think that's a great example of an intentional, thoughtful thing that happened. And I think it changed. I'm not saying the whole community changed between one project, but it opened my eyes. And I think there were other people who were really impacted by that project.
I just feel like it was a really, it was this excuse the community decided to, it was this narrative of an excuse they decided to create so they didn't have to face the fact that they needed to start understanding the community is transforming. It was because what it does is it discounts. They don't know the harm that narrative does, right? Because, and I can't tell you, I hear it I've heard it ever since I've set foot. This has been a 30-year narrative, and it's still used. And it's used on all levels. It's used. I've heard situations where there's officers that still share this narrative and they believe this. And it's just like, you gotta be kidding me. Right. We can't be here for any other reason. And if you really even know how the corrections work, it would make no sense. It makes no sense that would happen, because if I'm correct, the people who are in these correctional facilities here in Oshkosh, I think it's short time. It's like at most, I think, a year and a half. And then if they have longer stuff, they move somewhere else. But it's not long term. No one's moving their family. The other thing is this. Why would you think people would uproot their family to be closer to someone that's incarcerated? And my question back is always, would you? Well, no. Then why do you think we would? Are we not? That's always my question. Like, why would you think that? I've never had anybody actually say they would. And I'm not saying like that it's never happened. Have I met people that's happened? Yes, but it wasn't to be closer to the person that was incarcerated. It's that they learned about how nice it was to live in this community, visiting the person that was incarcerated, and found that there was more job opportunities and more in safety and a good school system. So then they decided to move.
Right.
But it wasn't like, I'm moving here to be closer to this incarcerated individual.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that story that you tell too, because that's a good thing. If someone did move here because there was some history with the prison, it's a new family in town, adding to the vibrancy. So,
yeah, they just found that there was really good opportunities and resources. So they moved. And that's exactly why people do move.
I think there's also a truth to this story that Oshkosh has forgotten about. And the people who are saying that, oh, we didn't have black people in the community, blah, 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 is that they had forgotten, maybe selective amnesia, but I think maybe the generation about why there weren't black people living in Oshkosh before.
Oh, facts.
And there actually were black people who lived in Oshkosh at the turn of the century. But in the 20s, it's chilling, but the KKK was very active in this area. People don't know that, but it's true. Where Pick and Save is now, there was a massive KKK tabernacle, a building, like a structure that was huge.
Bruh.
That this in the 1920s that hosted KKK rallies, regional KKK rallies here in Oshkosh. That's chilling. Also, Oshkosh was, my understanding, was effectively a sundown town for many, many years. That while there weren't laws on the books, that it was expected that
the culture was in place.
The culture was in place that black people weren't welcomed in the town and were going to be ushered out of the town by sunset.
To be fair, I believe that's just the region as a whole.
Well,
no, just seriously, because that was Appleton, that was Fond du Lac, that was just the region. Yeah. And then, I'm not trying to take any heat off of it, but it was the culture of this region from my understanding.
That makes sense. And then I know I've seen population data statistics that really by the 50s and into the 70s, there were virtually a handful of black people left living in Oshkosh. And I think that's largely because of decades of being made to feel unwelcome here. I think because it happened over decades, probably people who grew up here didn't even necessarily realize how it had happened or why it had happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's great that, the community's changing and that we're beginning to reflect more of the diversity of the country. It's kind of slow going, but I think it's a good thing.
Facts. Okay. I said at the beginning of this that this was going to be a vibe. And this is, there's power in acknowledgement and truth. Can't really move forward if we just don't actually say the tough things. And then let's have a talk about that.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel very strongly about that especially the topics, and we'll get into that, but race, racism, racial equity make people really uncomfortable for a lot of reasons.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's really important to push through that. And it's not going to be a perfect conversation, but we've got to have the conversation.
You know what I want to say about that, and then we'll go to the next segment, is here's the funny thing. I don't think a lot of people understand that those conversations are uncomfortable to the people of color, too.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like, we don't really want to have those conversations. You know what we want? We just want to be.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to talk about that stuff.
Yep.
I just want to be.
Yeah.
I just want to be. But we have to talk about those things so we can be.
Well, that's when we get to the topic of the week. We'll get there. That's why I worded it a specific way.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Naughty/Heroes Corner. This is your opportunity to tell us, put somebody in the naughty/hero, not necessarily a body. It can be an organization. It can be a thing. It's whatever you want it to be. Aaron, what do you have?
So I have both.
Oh,
and
I like this.
Current event. Yeah. Current event. So in the naughty corner, he's actually already on the naughty list, one of these, and so he'll get an extra strike next to his name. But Senator Johnson, he's on my naughty list this week. And Congressman Grothman, we can add to that list too. They both voted against a bill in the past 2 weeks that would protect both interracial marriage and same-sex marriage.
Bruh.
Facts.
And The bill passed both the Senate and the Congress with bipartisan support. There were 12 Republican senators who voted for it. There were 39 congressmen. So they could have, been still with their party and voted in favor of it, but they did not. But then my hero is Senator Tammy Baldwin, who is voted for it, but not only voted for it, but is really credited as the one who for months has been very strategic about this bill, had the conversations that needed to be had, got the votes that they needed to get, and knew that when it was brought forward that it was going to pass. So she, was smart, got it done, and so shout out to Senator Baldwin.
Yes. This is not about party. This is about principle.
Yeah, and it's just, I had to decide a long time ago that when it comes to my family and the rights and laws around my family, that I'm going to be honest and vocal and speak out about it. I think some people might not understand how important this bill is, but there was no federal protection for interracial marriage and gay marriage beyond a Supreme Court decision. And usually that's trumps everything.
Right.
But if that Supreme Court decision were to change, which is very possible.
Right. If it's not codified in the law,
right,
things can change. And we didn't think that was possible until it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if the Supreme Court decision gets thrown out or changed, a lot of laws against interracial marriage would go automatically back in effect. Wisconsin actually has a constitutional amendment that bans gay marriage, so that constitutional amendment would go back into effect. Why that's so important for my family, besides the legal relationship between my husband Paul and myself, which is really important for a number of reasons. This I think people would find fascinating, but I've mentioned Paul and I adopted 4 sons through foster care. When they were adopted, we did not have legal marriage, and only one of us was able to legally adopt them. So the way it worked is Paul legally adopted all of them, but we changed their last name to my last name. So they got my name, but I was not their legal parent for many, many years. And it wasn't until the Supreme Court decision that made our marriage legal, that I could go back. This is kind of fascinating. I went back and had to do a step parent adoption. So similar to, if a couple remarried or if someone remarried in a relationship and that the new parent wanted to adopt the children of the other parent. So I went through the exact same process that a step parent would go through to adopt my own children who I'd always raised. But that ability was based on marriage law. So that's why this bill in particular is so important to me, that safeguard that if the Supreme Court decision changes, I need to know that my family, my marriage and my kids are still mine legally.
Bruh.
Yes. Facts. Okay. I think we are going to take a quick commercial break.
Okay.
All right.
Hi, I'm Dawn Gulke, the Executive Director of Casa of the Fox Cities. Science proves that one consistent adult can change the story of a child. Could that one person be you? Become a court-appointed special advocate. Build a relationship with a child, help identify their needs, and give that child a voice in a process that can otherwise feel lonely. Contact us today. Children who have experienced abuse and neglect can't wait. Learn more about Casa of the Fox Cities at casafc.org or call Leah at 920-257-4733.
Okay, we are back. And we are now at the point of the show, which you already know. Okay, it makes me happy every time. Every time. I don't know why, but it's fire. It just says, all right, topic of the week time. We're about to jump into this. And so it is topic of the week time. And Aaron, we got a theme.
We've got a thing. We've been circling around it.
So what is our topic of the week?
So the topic of the week that I'm glad I get to bring up is white people talking about race, racism, and racial equity.
Look, all right, y'all. I'm along for this. I was when Aaron told me, because usually I ask the guest sometimes the guest volunteers what their topic of the week is going to be in advance, and then sometimes I find out that in that day when we start recording in the morning. And in this case, I found out today, and then I took a deep breath. And I said, I'm along for this ride. Let's do this.
Well, thank you for giving me a platform. To be honest, I actually wrote something of a manifesto, or I wrote this out a number of years ago. It's been, I think, at least 5 years ago, when I realized that a problem with the conversation about race, racism, and racial equity is that white people didn't like to talk about it. And if they did talk about it, they wanted to do kind of these statements where, oh, I just believe we should treat everybody the same. And that's a nice sentiment, of course, but it would kind of end the discussion, like, oh, but not really wanting to engage in it.
Right. I don't see color.
I don't see color. And another thing that I realized is that for most white people, their understanding of racism is really stuck in the 1960s and how racism was talked about in the 1960s, which racists were those really mean, awful white people who yelled at, black school kids as they were walking into school buildings. Like, those are racist. I'm not that. And the understanding of racism has really evolved, especially just over the past 10 years, where racism now really needs to be thought about as, really any behavior structure that is unfair and harms people because of race. So, one of the things that I think he does many good things, but President Biden at one point said, I don't have a racist bone in my body. And when he says that, he's using that 1960s thing, like, I would never do that. I'm not racist. But he's part of a system, a government and a system that's definitely privileged white people. And, so decisions, he can't help, but some of the decisions and some of the things do have a racist element to them. And I know that's a really strong word, but that has and continues to some degree harm people of color because of that history.
What do you mean?
Well, okay, so I think stories are the most powerful.
No, I'm all about good narratives. Narratives, to me, you know what? No one ever forgets a good narrative.
Okay, well, I think it's important for me, and this is one way that my eyes were opened. And this is talking about the idea of systemic racism, and that's really kind of what we're talking about now. Racism today, besides the really overt, awful kind, is also the systemic kind that's, kind of under the surface, or not even under the surface. It's operating in our daily life and we don't even know it. So my story is my kids' elementary school. For years, the PTO has run an art program called Masterpiece Art, where parents come in and talk to kids about artists, about great artworks and artists. And it was a way to kind of introduce the arts into the school and give the arts some extra attention, I suppose. I did this for a number of years. I have a background in art and comfortable talking about art. And the program had 30 artists. The idea was over 6 years, students would be introduced to 5 artists. Out of those 30 artists, 3, I believe, were a woman or a person of color, and of those 3, one was a woman who was a person of color. So mostly it was all white men. But what was interesting is I didn't pay attention to that first, because I had learned about all these artists in school, and I was really comfortable talking about all these artists. So I was more than happy to go up and talk about, Jackson Pollock or Pablo Picasso, and show a picture of the artist and talk about the artwork in front of the class. But as I did that over a few years, I became more uncomfortable as I'm looking out and seeing who I'm teaching. And the classroom is 30-40% black and brown students. And I'm pointing to this old white guy, who made some crazy art, and somehow telling them that he's super important. And maybe he is, but I'm not even beginning to give equal, justice to artists of color. Why that's systemic is when I went to art school, I was taught by a white male art history instructor. All of my classes were, except one was a TA who happened to be a woman, but for the main instructor was still a white male. The textbook, the main art history textbook that I learned from, written by a white guy, and 95% of the artists in that book were old white guys. And so, of course, then when I go to teach kids about art, I'm going to rely on that years of history of what I've learned about art, and going to kind of perpetuate that system. And then then the next step is, well, if you want to change, how are you going to change? And so I'm like, well, I've got to introduce some black artists, into this, and black and brown artists. And I have to be honest, it was hard. I didn't know these artists as well. I had to look, I had to go find new artists doing things, maybe trying to figure out what they were doing, and then try to understand their art. Even, it's true just how to pronounce their names. I wasn't comfortable with their names necessarily, and had to, get to the point where, okay, I might not know everything about this artist as much as I should, but I'm still going to get in front of the classroom and teach about this artist because it's important, and I'll get better at it. So one of the artists I started teaching about was Kehinde Wiley, who is a black gay artist, but happens to be the artist who did Barack Obama's presidential portrait that is now in the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery.
Right.
And he, just amazing artist, does beautiful artwork where he takes African-American people, paints gorgeous portraits of them, but often puts them in settings, very ornate settings, beautiful backgrounds, often maybe in a throne or something that kind of elevates those people to the same that nobility or historical figures would have been painted. Anyway, amazing artist. Kids responded like crazy to it, but it was very intentional, and it was not necessarily easy, again, to find an artist, get comfortable with that artist, learn their name, feel like I could design an activity that kids could do about that artist, because that was part of the learning, is kids do an art activity as well. So Anyway, so that's, just my example of, systemic racism and what it takes to disrupt that.
So my thought, here's where my mind went, and I don't want to take us too far off the path, is when did you find the courage? Because there's a conversation that's being had and that I'm having with individuals right now, is there's really a plethora, a ton of really well-intentioned people who want to do better.
Mm-hmm.
But right now they're scared.
Yeah.
There's this fear of being canceled. And if I go in there, I want to learn, or I want to do something different, or, but if I say the wrong thing, I'm scared I'm going to be attacked. I'm going to be canceled. I'm going to be whatever. And there's this fear. Did you have those same worries? And what gave you the courage to move forward, regardless, even though you just said, like, this wasn't my comfort zone stuff, but I still intentionally went there and made a difference?
Yeah, I think all of that's true. And there's still some of that, talking about these things is difficult, and I say stupid stuff and have to get comfortable with, saying something stupid and acknowledging that it was stupid and how to correct that. But, really my two sons realizing that like, oh, I'm their dad and this is my job. Like, and I said that, Paul and I were kind of aware that we were speaking up for our sons, but then also like, well, we can't just change these specific situations that are happening, but have to do what we can to change the environment and speak out about that. That is why I wrote something of a manifesto or a statement about white people talking about race and racism, because of that very thing. And so one is like, yeah, it's going to make you uncomfortable, but first you need to learn about the different topics, kind of understand what racism is today, understand what white privilege means, and people kind of can freak out about that, but it's just kind of a fact. So like being able to talk about it, need to talk about, things like white space, need to talk about racial equity, and just begin to have an awareness of those. And then something that you might appreciate is that I say that white people need to talk to each other who are kind of on that same journey and need to get kind of comfortable having the conversation so that they're comfortable saying the words race and racism and talking about discrimination and bias and all that without too much fear of feeling too uncomfortable, but having that conversation with other white people. I think it's really important. Today's a little different, but I think it's really important when white people are talking about racism, if they're in the presence of African Americans, that they understand that the Black people have the authority. This is their life experience, so they need to listen to them, but also not force or assume that African Americans and Black people want to talk about these topics, because like you were saying, it's kind of, it can be like, oh, I'd rather not have to talk about these, but I have to. So just being sensitive to that as well. And then I think white people need to understand that they will say stupid things and they might get some criticism for that, but they'll be okay. They can apologize and hopefully people will accept the apology, but saying stupid things just kind of goes with the territory when you're talking about a new topic.
Yes, I talk about this very often as I talk to people, and my thing is I always say, stay engaged. You're gonna say wrong things. Forgive yourself. Show grace to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Show grace to yourself, but don't stop. Don't stop. Go get right back in the room. Get right back on the horse.
Yeah, I love
that.
And
continue on the growth. That there truly lets me know. Like I admire that. Like if I know your intent, and it's one, and it's a good one.
Yep.
Solid, right? I'm not getting hung up on these little mistakes, and I think people got to remember when you do see some things where there's these outbursts and stuff like that, sometimes it's just really long built up things, and you might have been the 82nd person who said that thing or touched that thing, or somebody earlier did whatever. And it's not about, all of that energy isn't about that moment with you. So show yourself grace.
Yeah, I like that. And, and then kind of one of my last things, and this is kind of my own experience too, is that we need to get comfortable talking about race and racism. Because one thing, especially for parents, is we need to be able to talk to kids about it, because kids are seeing it, they're experiencing it. And if we're not comfortable talking about it ourselves, how are we going to talk with our kids about it? And that was a real realization in my home that, it's not necessarily a fun thing to talk about, racism, discrimination, the experience our kids are having, but we need to have that conversation, be intentional about having that conversation in our family, in our home, so that when they do have these experiences, that they have some language to put around it and some understanding. And I'll tell you, my sons don't always apply it maybe quite correctly. Sometimes they'll come home and say, "Oh, this teacher's racist." I'm like, "Well, tell me what's going on. Okay, let's talk." Maybe not, but at least they have some language and they're trying to figure it out.
Right.
One other thing, and this is going to jump big, but why I think this is really important for us as a community, and this is just one statistic, that last year 17 students were expelled from the Oshkosh Area School District. That's more than double a typical year. Of those 17, 13 of those students were students of color. And even worse is that of those 17, 9 were black. And based on the percentage of black students in the school district, which is 7%, that rate is 22 times higher than white students were suspended. 22 times higher than like equity should tell us it should be if everybody was kind of having the same experience through school.
Right.
22 times is a chilling number. That we're not talking 10% more, 20% more. We're not even talking 200% more likely. We're talking more than 2,000 times or 2,000% more likely to be suspended in the school district. And I think we need to be able to talk about that.
I feel like it's, and now I don't keep a close eye on what's happening in there. Where's the challenge? Is the conversation being had? Do you think? Because if you could pull those numbers, someone else has said it out loud in some space. Maybe a space where no one was at, but
well, actually, to be honest, to get those numbers took quite a bit of work. Of asking several times, and actually, ultimately, it helped that Miles McGuire with the Oshkosh Examiner was asking for them too, for last school year. And I'm not sure the school board, we have a fantastic school board. It's kind of like you said, they get this, they mean well, they want to do well, but
yes.
I don't think they were even aware of these statistics, and they approve expulsions, but I don't think they were even aware that this is what was happening.
Right.
That they were participating in it. And the way I'm not an expert on expulsions, and I'm not, because I know they're kind of complicated, so I'm a little hesitant to speak about it. But my impression is that the school district says within expulsions is the way it works is they kind of draw a circle around the one incident that happened. This happened, and therefore we are justified in this expulsion, and it takes away the entire context and school experience of that student, and that context and experience and everything that led up to it is, if we're really doing justice to the student themselves, needs to be paid attention to.
Yeah, we don't have the context. What I would say though is it would at least be worthy of a valid discussion to really look at that.
Yeah, this is, I really think there is a need to kind of look at these expulsions and look at students who are being suspended and kind of do a total kind of look at what are all the circumstances and factors, and where might be opportunities where we could begin to impact this. So another statistic which I think is related is, and I know Barb Herzog, who's our school board president right now, cares about the fact that Black students, Black and brown students, and Black students in particular, aren't represented in advanced coursework as much as they should be in the high schools, percentage-wise. But the schools or the state just released testing results, a few weeks ago, and here's one stat. 255 Black students in grades 3 through 8 were eligible to take the forward exam. So 255 students taking the exam. 2 tested as advanced in English and none tested as advanced in math. So the reality that Black students aren't represented in advanced coursework at the high school level is starting in elementary school. They're not, somehow we need to talk about why aren't they getting the education they need, the opportunities, the instruction they need, so that by high school they're seeing themselves and demonstrating that they're capable of being in advanced coursework. How do you feel about that?
I'm all over the place with it.
Okay.
My initial thought process is, my daughter did advanced classes.
Great.
So I'm really glad.
Okay.
About that they're available and that there's a good program with CAP courses and stuff like that, and that she had those opportunities, right? I also am thinking there needs to be an individual, like the problem that I think that happens with some of this stuff is we don't have anybody focused on it. And we don't have representation working within the school system.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so if you don't have representation, then these are things, what othering happens. We're talking about these other, no matter how well intentioned, and I know really good educators that they care. They care, and they will acknowledge and they will actually, they see these things, and but at the end of the day, the representation matters.
Yeah.
And to have somebody like legitimately, like, this is what they do. Like, they look into this stuff and they start having these conversations, and it's got to be someone that education respects. So it almost has to be another educator.
Yeah.
Right. It can't just be somebody that comes in and tries to fix the things, because it's not going to be heard the same. That feels different. It's going to take someone who's been through the education system, is an educator themselves, and then comes in and says, hey, have we looked at this, and here's some things we should at least consider. I think more often than not that what happens is people don't, the best way to not acknowledge it is to never truly process it. So in other words, you may kind of know it doesn't look right, but I'm not going to run the numbers and truly find out that it's a 2,000% difference.
Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss.
Well, that's really why I poll stats a lot. I've met and communicated with every single school board member more than once. And I try to get I think the data is really important, but my thing is I want them to just really sit with it. And I don't have all the answers about why the data is that way.
Right.
But are we really paying attention? Do we really understand the implications of this data? That is, I think there's some great people in the Oshkosh Area School District, and I'm actually big fans of them.
Facts.
I think Brian Davis, our new superintendent, is a fantastic superintendent and really has his mind around these issues. And he knows this because I've shared this with him. One of my frustrations is Fond du Lac School District and Appleton Area School District both have diversity professionals, like trained diversity professionals focused on racial equity in their school
Appleton
district.
has an entire diversity department.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know as much about it as I would like, but the things I've heard about it is that it's doing some really cool stuff.
Used to work in it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. It wasn't necessarily a department, but the positions were in place when I was there.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I don't quite understand, but kind of what I've been told is for some reason Oshkosh feels that they can do this just by everybody focusing on equity. And my thing, like you said, is I think there needs to be somebody who every day when they go into work says, okay, what committee needs to meet? What policy needs to be updated? What conversation needs to be had?
Right.
This is, that they can focus on it because the administrators have so many responsibilities. So their attention is so, spread out over so many things.
They've got a lot of things to focus on.
Yeah. And important stuff.
Absolutely.
And so just to think that, they can, this can just be added to their workload doesn't make sense to me.
And I think, here's what I think where it goes wrong sometimes, because I think what people fear is like this person's going to come in and they're like the enforcer. They're like this. They're the racial cop.
Yeah,
right. Come in here and make people feel bad. But that's actually not how it has to be done. And often if you have really good DEI professionals, that's not how they do. They're unifiers more than that. And what they will do is they will go first and engage all the parties. So they'll go in the community and have these conversations and find out how do people feel and what are they thinking. They'll go inside and find out the same things and then find out what are the resources. They'll go back out to the community and share some of these resources. And then they're able to process and explain some of the things like what you're sharing right now. Like, hey, do you realize this is what this looks like? But it doesn't have to have this nasty bite to it. It just has to be a matter of fact. Right. And the messaging can be fair and appropriate where no one's the villain. We're just trying to fix it.
Yep. Well, and so you have this experience, but you know what my impression is too, that without having that professional engaged in the conversation, we're just trying to make it up as we go then. Like for every other issue, if you're building a new building, you hire an architect, an engineer
first,
who has the professional experience and they can solve all those issues. You don't have to learn how to be an architect or an engineer.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to this issue, I just feel like this assumption, we can just do this ourselves, assumes that, we can just figure this out. But then you make mistakes, so Oshkosh School District, and I love the administrators there, and I'm big fans of them. But, they started, and this has happened more than once, but they started a DEI committee. They put, 30 people on it, and it after a few meetings, it dissolved. And, they're like, oh, well, now we think we should do it this way. I would argue if you had a diversity professional who has experience in this world, they would have had experience on how to set up an effective diversity committee, how to invite people to participate, how to engage people, and you would have had success the first time. And what's important to me is so much time has passed, so we're now, the first conversation about that other diversity committee probably was pushing for that 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. And now, a lot of time was wasted.
It's tough because if you do something like that, even though it's really well intentioned, I use the term it's herding cats because it's so many people with their experiences and their lenses and their points of views. And then there's this excitement that is it's finally happening and something's going to happen. But then the energy isn't able to get channeled where you bring everyone together and we're like, okay, I'm going to validate everybody's experience, but right here is where we're going to put the energy and we're going to try to solve this because this seems like this is either low hanging fruit and it's something we can easily interact and put into play, yep, or this is something that is really important, and if we are able to actually do something about it, it's going to make so many other things easier to do. So it's either end of the spectrum. I'm cool with low-hanging fruit or the one really big thing.
Yep.
Whichever one.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, just do something, real.
Well, and my challenge to that though is also just doing something to do something if we don't know what we're really going to do, because it's spending the important capital of buy-in. Because every time we start something and it falls apart because it doesn't have someone directing or channeling it in the right direction and all that, it makes that other side, the othering side, it validates them.
Yeah. And
say, see? And that's why it's so important, like these efforts, when we do try to do these efforts like that, we figure it out and bring in somebody that can truly channel it. And,
Yeah, I think that's super important. And I know I've been on a couple of diversity committees that were kind of really well structured or managed. And even though there were good intentions, they really end up just being a stalling mechanism. And
Bruh.
And not that anybody intends that, but it's like, and I'm not that knowledgeable about what's gone on with this city and county's diversity committees, but
me neither.
But one that I've been on, I know a problem was that the committee would meet and we would say, oh, well, maybe we should do this and maybe we should do that. And then we wouldn't meet again for 2 or 3 months. And then 2 or 3 months, somebody's like, oh, yeah, you were supposed to call so-and-so, or wasn't somebody supposed to do something? And they're like, oh, yeah, I called them. They never called me back. And it's like, wait, we've gone 3 months and you didn't get a call back.
We just left it, right?
Yeah.
No. That being said, like, I'm always happy when I see all these people who do want to make this difference. But I do think it does take the right kind of person to say, okay, like at the beginning of anything, meeting seldomly never works. Like, make the 1 month a meeting every 2 weeks for the first 3 months. And just so we can build that initial foundation of what we want to do.
Absolutely.
Or who we even are. Right. And then I'm really big on what are our easiest low-hanging fruit things? Like some things, there's some really, everything isn't the tangible fix that people think it is. Like people think it's some initiative or we've got to do this. And sometimes in these spaces, the answer is as simple as go out there and let those voices be heard and validate them, because it empowers, and then it just might make them go out and do the things that they need to do, because now they realize someone listened to me and they appreciated that I shared my experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really a bigger answer than we're going to go here and do this thing and do that. That's like, I can't share that enough. Like how often I see people become self-empowered where they make that change that the group is hoping to make.
Yeah, I get it. I think that's really important. You've heard some of my stories as a parent, and I just feel really strongly that we need to create opportunities for Black and brown parents and parents of Black and brown students to share stories like I'm having the opportunity to share today. Because I think when people hear them, it changes their perceptions.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay.
Ooh.
I don't know. We went there.
Yeah. It's, I appreciate the opportunity. It's a topic I feel really strongly about as a parent. There aren't a lot of opportunities to really engage in it in a meaty way like this. So when I was invited on the podcast, I was a little intimidated because I've listened to a lot, but I, knew right away that, this is what I want to talk about if we can.
Oh yeah. No, it's the Kosh. And I think this conversation will help make the Kosh better. Seriously. So I think it's powerful.
Well, thank you. I think just little steps.
Little steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Facts. Okay. Aaron, is there anything else you'd like to share at this time, or anything else on the topic?
I think we've said some important stuff today. I again appreciate the opportunity. So I think for now we're good.
We're good. Okay. It's that time of the show. Thank you, Kosh listeners, for giving us your valuable time and your minds and sharing this with us. I'm always hopeful, like when we do this, especially these kinds of conversations, like that there truly is some value being brought to the greater community, to you personally. But no matter what, I appreciate the fact that you give us your time and your minds. So know that. Now, once again, please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Please, if you want to be a guest, if you want to do a shout out, if you got guest suggestions, which I got some very good guest suggestions from our friend Sco Sassy, Dr. Sco Sassy, for our guest today. Reach out to us at askthekosh@gmail.com. Once again, that is askthekosh@gmail.com. It is the holiday season. If you would like to do some shout outs, or whatever you like, birthday wishes, whatever you want to do, please feel free. Use our voicemail. Our voicemail is 920-385-9298. Once again, that is 920-385-9298. Kosh listeners, I need you to go out there and think about possibly giving us a review. We need reviews. We're trying to elevate the profile. If you appreciate these conversations we're having, let other people know about these too. Share these when we share them out. Give us reviews, which raises our rankings in places. And don't be scared to get you a little Kosh gear, because there's nothing that says I am local than a t-shirt or a hat that says the Kosh. I can't stress that enough. It is holiday season. If you don't know what to get that special person, maybe it's the Kosh t-shirt. I'm just saying. Okay. So thank you again. And now we are on to what I would say is my favorite part of the show. If you know, you know. It is shout out time. All right, Aaron, what do you got?
I've got a couple today. We kind of have a theme, but I want to do a shout out to my neighbor and friend, Mushe Subuwa. Mushe is very engaged in these conversations in the community. Do you know Mushe?
I do. I know of Mushe.
Okay.
I've been in virtual spaces with Mushe, and let's just say Moshe has gotten an invitation, so there may be a Moshe episode in 2023.
He should definitely come on here. He's just an amazing individual, but also he keeps showing up. He's on a number of diversity committees. When there's opportunities to speak up in the community, he's speaking up. But beyond that, he is really engaged in the African immigrant community in the Fox Valley area.
Yes.
And really engaged individually with people's challenges and struggles and trying to help people individually. He also has two amazing sons that he's trying to advocate for and make sure they, have the best experience possible in the Usher school system. And so he's just always working really hard, and I know it's not easy, and so I appreciate him.
Okay. Anyone else? I mean, look, the shout outs isn't there is no limit.
Well, the other one that I'll do that's a little self-serving, because she's my boss right now. So the president of the Payne Arts Center and Gardens Board is Trina Wolt.
Okay.
But a cool thing about Trina is that she has just become the director of Leadership Oshkosh. So she's now running the Leadership Oshkosh program, and I know that she totally respects and the history of that program and how great it is, but right. I think she also really sees the potential, and particularly the potential for kind of expanding an awareness of diversity. Yeah. And she's really talking about that and paying attention to it. I think that's super important. I think that program has had a big impact in our community and will continue to have a big impact. And so if we can bring diversity, thoughts and awareness and responsibility into that, I think it'll be fantastic.
Oh, no, I think it's an important thing. It's something I've had conversations with the leadership Appleton or Fox Cities about some of the changes they're interacting, and they're making some very intentional, conscious efforts to help, because it's to help you be a better professional. Well, you know what? To be a better professional, you need to be ready for who the new talent is and what the new workforce looks like.
Absolutely. And so Trina really gets that, and is so I just appreciate her and the work she's doing as well, that she's, again, someone on the ground doing the work. That's great.
Okay. Awesome. I love it. All right. shout outs. I got a shout out to Paul Galinsky, my man. He was the admissions. He was the gentleman who's the director of admissions at UW Oshkosh. He just retired out. Man, solid leader, great man as a whole. Much love to you in your new adventures, Paul. You know, I'm sure I'll get a chance to connect with you soon. Big shout out to John Nance. John Nance is this young gentleman who is a photographer, and he does these amazing photos, these black and white photos that just have this look. I can't explain it to you, but it's more than art to me. It's soul. If you could put soul in a picture, these have soul to them. So if you don't know, look it up. His name is John Nance. He's been featured at the Trout Museum and has had art featured up and down College Ave. And he's only 20.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll show you some things.
Yeah, I want to see.
To Patty Heffernan, got to have a nice meeting with her. She's doing some amazing things as far as mental health and services for people who are in the system, dealing with like social workers and foster care and things of such. She's powerful and just doing amazing things. Big shout out to Angie Lee. You already know, girl. You already know. Big shout out. Big shout out to Fat Mama out there with the food. If you don't know, Fat Mama's is back open, located on Ohio and 7th. I don't know about you, but when I drive down the street, when you can smell the smoky ribs, I said smoky. I didn't say smoky. I said smoky. When you can smell those driving down the street, somebody knows what they're doing. And her potato salad, let me just say this now, is fire. Just fire. So check it out. Big shout out to Karen Schneider. We had a great conversation. Looking forward to seeing where things go. Big shout out to Dylan from the Herd. Dylan takes care of my tickets. And thank you, Dylan, for always following through and making the things happen. I appreciate you. And big shout out to my partners in crime, Sean and Tarman, for having some cocktails with a brother on his birthday. It's just nice. I appreciate that, man. All right. So we are on to the very last part of the show. And this is where you get an opportunity. You can give us, the Kosh listeners, parting words of wisdom. Or you can tell us, what would your self today say to your 12-year-old self? Or you can do both.
I think I'll do a variation on it, but I just want to thank you for hosting this podcast. I think it's really important that you bring, voices to the table and they get to have these conversations. I think it is like a ripple effect, even if, a handful of people, if it has an impact and then that handful, impacts the next. I told you, I'm a big fan of the podcast. I have listened to a lot of them. I got started a year late, but then I go back and I've been listening to, ones from the first year.
We've grown. What I will say is we've gotten better. At the beginning, it was definitely learned by, in real time, trial by fire.
I'm sure, probably from your perspective, from a listener perspective, the new ones are goodies. The oldies are goodies too. But I just love how comfortable you make everybody feel, and you've had a wide range of people that you've spoken with, and every conversation just feels completely, natural. You put people at ease. So I'm not sure if that's parting words of wisdom, except more people should listen to the podcast and more people should do what you're doing.
We'll take it.
Okay.
Facts. All right. So what'd you think?
It was okay. I talk a lot, so it's probably longer than it should be, but I love it.
You know what? You're not the longest episode.
Okay.
The Kosh.